Hi, I'm Tess from the Arty Crafty Place and I am here to show you the basics of block printing. So I'm going to talk through the materials you need to use when you're block printing at home and then some very basic techniques that you'll use when printing onto fabric and paper. So these are all the tips you need to know and then you'll be ready to start block printing onto fabric and paper items. So the materials I'm using, I have got a foam printing mat. Now this is really important when you're block printing that you have a soft surface to print onto. This is because the printing blocks that we're using are hand carved from Jaipur and they're not always completely flat. So when you print, you want to be able to wiggle them. So it's important to use a foam mat. I've got a paint tray, just a plastic paint tray that's very easy to wash up. You could also use a plate or a lunchbox lid or something. I've then got sponges, so we apply the paint with sponges and I'll show you how to use them later. And I've also got a couple of sponge dabbers which are really good to use when you're doing two colour block printing. And then the paints I'm going to be using are fabric paints. Now these are water-based fabric paints and you can use them when printing onto fabric and paper. So I'm going to show you how to use these. If you were just printing on paper at home, you could use acrylic paint or even poster paint. So when you're using your paint, you just want to pour it out onto your tray and just pour a kind of ketchup sized blob onto the corner of your tray. I tend to keep them separated so they don't blend together. And just a blob of each colour out. And then you're going to have a sponge for each colour. So you're going to dip your sponge in the paint and then you're going to tap off the excess. So dip your sponge completely in the paint, tap off the excess so your sponge starts to absorb some paint and you don't have any big blobs on there. And then the last piece of equipment I've got is a dry cloth. So this is just a plain piece of fabric and we use this when printing to clean the blocks. So once you've printed with one colour, we'll use the cloth to wipe the paint off and then you can go again with the next. So I'll show you how to use this. So I'm just going to be test printing onto a plain piece of cotton fabric. You can print onto any sorts of fabric, calico, cotton, even silk, but I'm just test printing onto a plain piece of cotton. So with your sponge, like I said, dip it into the paint, tap off the excess so there's no big blobs on there. Then you want to pick up your printing block, hold it flat, and then you lightly tap all over the surface. It's really important to make sure you're just tapping the paint on and you're not wiping or squeezing it into the design. So just a light layer of paint. Turn the printing block upside down and then you just want to give it a wiggle. So just side to side, up and down, just to get the edges. And that's when you'll find your foam mat really helpful. So side to side, up and down, and then up. And there you have a lovely print. So if I want to go again with the same colour, you need to apply paint each time. Otherwise, you'll get a very faint print. So I'm going to go again with the blue. So dip my sponge in the paint again, tap off the excess, and then lightly all over. And after a couple of test prints, you'll find out whether you've got too much or too little paint. So it's always good to have a practice first. And then up. And then if you want to change the colour on the printing block, you use your dry cloth, and then you just give the block a wipe, and wipe off all the excess paint from the surface. And then you can go again with your next colour. So I'm going to go with my green now. And I'm going to, again, lightly tap the paint all over the surface, turn it upside down, and give it a wiggle. And again, a really lovely print. And then I'm going to show you quickly how to do some two-colour block printing, because this is really useful when you're printing to add more detail to your designs. So for this, I'm going to use my sponge dabbers. Now these are really handy when you're doing two colour block printing. So I'm going to dip these into the paint, get them all inked up, and then I'm going to use my blue first, and you can be quite precise with these, and I'm going to just lightly tap the paint on the body of the bird, and I'm going to do that in blue. And then I'm going to use my small sponge dabber to tap the tail green. And as you can see, you can be really precise with these and get the colour right where you want it. Turn it upside down, give it a wiggle, and then up. So when I printed this one, the leg didn't quite come out. So that just showed that I didn't push the bottom of the block hard enough. Now it's very hard to fix this, so what you do is on the next time printing, just make sure you really remember to get all the edges and push all over the block so you don't have any mistakes like that. So let's try again with this one. So blue on the body and then green on the tail, and you can see how useful these sponge dabbers are for getting that extra bit of detail on your print. So I'm going to turn it upside down. I'm really going to make sure I push on his feet this time, make sure that comes out, give it a good wiggle all over, and then up. And then when I'm finished with my printing blocks, again, you use your dry cloth, wipe off all the excess paint, and then you can just put this in the cupboard and use it again next time. You don't need to worry about doing anything else to it. As long as all the paint is off the surface, you can just put it away for next time. So those are the very basic techniques you need to know for block printing onto fabric and paper. And then with your equipment, you just wash this up with hot soapy water and use it again. So I hope you found those tips really helpful and that has encouraged you to block print at home.